Morning, everybody. It is kind of extremely quiet this morning, but I understand. So as he said before, it's funny, about 6 months ago, before we took the little break and everything with class, Lord had been dealing with me what I thought was just one lesson, and it wasn't until a couple weekends ago the Lord really started talking to me about relationship. And so we want to start by talking about the many relationships and roles that God plays throughout the Bible and in our lives. And we love to talk about the fullness of the Godhead, right? Like he encompasses everything. But what about the fullness that he provides in relationship?
All right.
The different roles and the different ways that he's willing to meet us and willing to make it work for us. So when I was trying to discover, how do I shed light on the area that we focus on, and the Lord reminded me of someone. I met this person when I was probably around 23 or 24 years old, and his name was Dennis. Now, I didn't call him by his first name. I called him Brother Kohlbrecker, but he was already elderly and up in years, but he was one of the most gentle, kind, and meek people you would ever encounter. My brother had started dating his now wife, and this was her father, Dennis Kohlbrecker. Now, Dennis was a minister. When I met him, he had been ministering for years. But you're not going to find his sermons recorded anywhere or on a familiar podcast or an app. Probably won't even ever hear his name widely said, but his words were always filled with wisdom and with love. And whenever I was talking to the Lord about, how do I introduce this, and he's the one that reminded me of Dennis. What really set him apart to me was his reaction when he would speak about Jesus. It didn't matter where we were. We could be in a restaurant, Golden Corral. We could be in a hospital waiting for one of the grandbabies to be born. But when he would talk about God, his whole countenance would change immediately. Without fail, he would begin to cry, and his voice would change in such a way that you could hear the love and adoration he had for God. Simply put, they knew each other. Yeah. In the beginning, honestly, in the early 20s, I didn't really know what to make of it because I'd not seen this type of communication before, especially from a man. It was unusual to see someone react in this way. But when he would teach, preach, or even just testify, he would go someplace in his mind and soul that came from a direct contact with God. He spoke of Jesus as someone that would speak of their beloved. It reminded me of how Jesus' relationship with John was. John wanted to be close. In John 13:23 says, "Now there was leaning on Jesus' bosom one of his disciples, whom Jesus loved." See, Dennis had figured it out. He had the relationship, the beautiful relationship with God that anyone could see and feel it. You see, you won't find his name or his works mentioned. He wasn't striving for that. But God knew his name. I'm sure Dennis wasn't perfect. I didn't live with him. I wasn't his daughter. I was just an extended relationship through marriage. But he had learned to walk with God, cherish their time together, and to love to study his word. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I'd find his Bible open whenever we would visit his home. And he was so sensitive to God's voice. Dennis passed away this year, and he is desperately missed. But if I was to describe you his whole life as anything, it would be that he knew God and God knew him. Yeah. So this, in a small way, is a tribute to his memory, because his life impacted me so much more, even though, honestly, I wasn't aware of it at the time. And the Lord brought another person to mind when I was thinking of Dennis. Genesis 5:22 and 24. "And Enoch walked with the Lord he walked with God after he begat Methuselah 300 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Enoch were 365 years. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him." We don't know much about Enoch. No exploits, no great works, nothing to indicate greatness in any way, but he walked with God. Yeah. They knew each other. They knew each other so well that God took him without death. And it was so interesting yesterday whenever the Lord brought Enoch to mind and he said, he broke the rules to take him with him.
Yeah.
We were all supposed to experience death. Every single one of us. But the Lord broke his own rule since the fall of Adam to take him with him. Broke the rules. He managed to get the relationship right. He communed with God before there was a tabernacle in the wilderness, before there was a day of Pentecost. And it was such a close relationship that God took away the curse of death to have him with him forever. And both of these examples caused me to pause, completely reevaluate where my priorities are in my walk with God. And I honestly started asking myself some questions. Have I allowed prayer to become a practice rather than a privilege? Has prayer become about me, or is it about him? Am I putting my time in, or am I willing to let him speak to me? Recently, I've really tried to allow God to guide me in prayer, and sometimes, I'll be honest, I don't get to talk much. And other times, I feel like I get to talk, doing all the talking. But I've looked back in my prayer life and realized I wasted a lot of time trying to make prayer about me pushing my own agenda. So naturally, I did most of the talking. And then I was confused as whenever I wouldn't hear from him. But prayer is really about communication and communion with him, and it aligns me to him. It's an opportunity to spend time with him and for him to show me his heart. It's an opportunity for us to get to know each other. I think we overcomplicate prayer a lot of the times.
Sure.
We create so many little different ways. I mean, Mia's come home a couple of times and said, they said we're supposed to do this for this amount of time and this. I was like, sis, you pray as long as you can pray. I mean, you know, she's young, but I don't want to overcomplicate it because it's not complicated. Do I read his word searching for him? Because he is the word. Am I studying it with intention, or has it become an obligation? He's right there. And so many times I just forget. Have I made salvation about escaping hell, or is it a means of intimacy with him? See, a few years ago, it really, and this is just my perspective. This isn't in the word anywhere, it's just a perspective. But hell isn't just a place of torment, but it's a place completely void of God. Can you imagine going a moment without him once you've known him? The very idea of being without him should upset us, beyond any fear of any other consequence. The void of that is so intense, the idea of just being without the presence of God. When I speak of him to others, is it with adoration and love, or is it about religion? Is it about me being Pentecostal? Or is there a depth there that goes beyond these four walls? And that's what touched me so much about Dennis, is you would think they had just met and he would fall in love with God every day. That's unique. And am I seeking the supernatural rather than the relational? Matthew 7:22 and 23 says, many will say in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? And in thy name cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works. And then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. The word here, knew, actually means similar to a union between a husband and wife. It's an understanding of each other. And I'll tell you this, the supernatural can happen anywhere at any time, because that's just the nature of God.
Right.
Anybody can be present. That's just how he works things out. But if I begin to seek after the supernatural and I miss the relational, I've missed it entirely.
Sure.
Who cares if I get to see the most wonderful things if there's no knowledge of each other?
Right. Yeah.
I can see part the Red Sea, and still get eaten up with myself because I don't want to hear the voice of God. I'm not seeking after that anymore. And honestly, who cares if no one knows my name in any capacity if he knows my name? Recently, in full transparency, I've really experienced a sense that I haven't done enough. Has anybody felt that way? Like it's never going to be enough. You're never going to accomplish enough. It's not going to ever live up to the expectations. And, reflecting on my life, I just seemed like the impact wasn't, I should be impacting more. I should be doing more. I should be reaching more. And I started just feeling this strong sense of hopelessness. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's horrible. I felt like I was not having a midlife crisis. I was having a spiritual midlife crisis. And about a month ago, I shared this with my husband because I was just overwhelmed by it. And it was causing a lot of problems. And I would pray and be like, Lord, I don't want to think, I don't want to think this. I want to do it, help me. But I kept telling, I would just tell myself, you should be doing more. You haven't accomplished what you've been asked to. And half your life is gone, it was just an overwhelming sense of, I almost felt paralyzed. You don't know how to move forward because you feel like anything you try is not quite where it should be. And yesterday, I felt the Lord ask me, would you be satisfied with your story being told as a one-liner like Enoch? Hebrews 11:5 says, by faith Enoch was translated, that he should not see death, and was not found, because God had translated him. For before his translation, he had this testimony, that he pleased God. Will that be enough? If no one else knows your name, your ambitions in the kingdom of God aren't fulfilled, will knowing me be enough? If me knowing you, will that be enough? See, my focus had become so distracted that I started viewing my relationship with God with external evidence, trying to point to things that I've done or accomplished or how far I've gotten somewhere.
That's good.
And as a result, it was really bringing me down. It was weighing me down. It's interesting. We don't talk about Enoch a lot because, again, it's just that one-liner. He's only mentioned 12 times in the Bible. But Enoch had gotten the relationship right. And as a result, he had one of the most powerful testimonies in the entire Bible. And someone here needs to hear that if you keep walking and you keep listening to his voice and getting as close as you can, he'll show you where to go and what needs to be done. Yeah. He knows my limitations. He knows what I physically, in my humanity, can accomplish. But keeping the relationship, the focus, and honestly, he'll take care of the rest. How many times do I get caught up in wanting to see certain things in my life because here's where I want to be, Lord. This is where I expected to be by now, and I like to set goals, and I'm type A, and I like to have things in these order, and why I'm not getting it done. Are you and I still talking?
Right.
Are we still getting closer, or have you pulled away from me to start focusing on other things? My niece recently sang a song, and it's from the 80s, I believe. I Miss My Time With You. Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful song. And I remember as a kid hearing it, and I didn't really truly understand the meaning of it, when you're a little kid. But it's so easy to get caught up in doing things for God that we miss being with God. Seeing what he wants to show me, the different roles and different relationships he plays with us throughout our lives that we miss sometimes. We'll miss the times that he's being a father to us, or he's being a shepherd, or he's being trying to get close to us, and we're starting to, but I got to do this over here, and I really got to focus over here, and it's like, slow down, I'm trying to show you something. I'm trying to get your attention. In Deuteronomy 11:22, for if you diligently keep all these commandments which I command you to do them, to love the Lord your God and to walk in all his ways, and to cleave unto him. Same word is used for husband and wife. Shall cleave to his wife. It's a union. It's more than just being a part of a body of Christ even. Like, you can know him. And I feel like I've barely scratched the surface. I'm never going to truly get all of it because I'm not capable, right? I am limited in my understanding, and I wonder sometimes even in heaven if I'm going to have full understanding at that point because he's so vast. But he's not asking me to do that. He's not asking that of you. He's asking you to let him get as close as possible. And this kind of sums it up. Deuteronomy 6:5 says, "And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy might." The word love in Hebrew is very, again, similar to the word to know. Having a strong emotional attachment to and desire either to possess or to be in the presence of an object. It's so easy to forget because we look at all the other commandments and we're trying to do this and we're trying to reach this, and we can get misled so easily and change our focus from what's the most important. 2020 really messed up a lot of people. It really did. It shook a lot of folks. And now I will tell you this, here in Texas, we did pretty well considering in comparison to a lot of places. But I felt like there was a shaking that was going on. And I felt in this moment, for me personally, it was a time for me to say, okay, we're not having church. We're not having these standard operating procedures. How do I still stay as close as possible? And it was life-changing for me because I became very disciplined, very honed in. And it was because, in truth, I don't know that this will be here in 20 years.
Right.
I have no guarantees that I'm going to get to be able to worship openly look at California.
Yeah.
I cannot base any of my relationship off of the wonder and beauty that we have of having church and doing all those things. That is a privilege.
Yep.
Having the Word of God is a privilege. Have you ever read the Fox's Book of Martyrs? I don't suggest that if you haven't. It's very, very violent. But there's people that died just to have the Bible. And I've got an app, and I've got this, and I got like 15 different versions of it. And I can start to think that everything becomes about where I am in life, where I'm going, as opposed to where does he want to go? What is he trying to tell me at this point? Heart, soul, and might express a fullness of devotion that encompasses the whole person. That's from the Apostolic Study Bible. He wants us to love him first before anything else. He didn't bring salvation just to spare you from hell. He did it because you are his.
That's good.
How many times has he broken the rules in your life you may not even be aware of?
Yeah.
For just to show that he loves you. I mean, think about it. No one had ever been translated before Enoch. That is fascinating to me. That this happens where he was taken and no one found him. 300 and something years old, and Pop's not here anymore. Where'd he go? But to me, what's so fascinating is here Adam, just a few generations before, had committed sin that just completely separated everything. The Lord's like, yeah, I don't care. I'm taking this guy with me.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, to me, that is just fascinating and it doesn't say that Enoch was perfect.
Pleased God.
He pleased God. See, we look for perfection. God's looking for relationship.
Yeah.
He does all of this to tell you, you belong to him. But we have so much noise that goes on. We forget that his opinion is what matters. We even sing songs about, I am who he says I am. Do you know who he says you are? What does he call you? Can he wake you up in the middle of the night? Or would you think, oh, that's something I ate? But in truth, how many times has he reached for us, and because we're not as familiar as we should be, we don't immediately recognize it. We brush it off. He is telling us over and over again his want of relationship. Honestly, he doesn't want procedure. He doesn't want obligation. He doesn't care about our traditions, but a union where we work in tandem with one another. You stay close and follow my lead. You belong to me. And if our relationship is first, everything else will fall into place. I get caught up sometimes, many, many times, on trying to, they talk about 5-year plan or 10-year plan. I mean, I have these spreadsheets for financial stuff, and that's how my mind works. But how many detours has the Lord taken me on just to get my attention? He's a jealous God. He is going to try and get your attention. He is going to try and capture that in some way, shape, or form. But how much easier would it be if I just walked with him every day? And I'm listening. I'm taking that time. And not because I'm afraid of somebody's perspective, or, you could leave here today and be like, she needs to work on that. That's, she needs some help with her teaching. But I can't let that be the defining factor of how I interact with his people or God.
Right.
We're never going to please everybody, but I can work to please him.
That's right.
You'd be surprised how much of a weight is lifted when you realize, okay, I have to please one person. And as a result, I typically, that overflow happens where you start to impact other people and you start to love people in the better way. I become a better mother. I become a better wife, a better friend, a better person, simply because the whole time there's a communion going on there.
Yeah.
But if I forget that and I get caught up, I will feel hopeless, because that's a big job to try and think that I can fix everything or please everyone. But I have to tell you, Dennis, he lived a life worth living. He was a great father, a great grandfather, and he is going to be horribly missed. But I thought, what a compliment for God to tie in Dennis to Enoch, because he's the one that I'm not reading anything about Enoch right now. I'm not in that. But it hit me so hard that that's what he's looking for. We don't need prestige. I don't need a place. I just need to know that he's close, and close enough for me to be able to talk to him each day and for him to talk to me. So this relationship series is actually going to be really digging into the first piece is going to be digging into his relationship and how he shows up in our lives. Because I think sometimes, I know I'll just be honest, I've missed it and couldn't figure out where this was coming from and why I was experiencing this and why do I feel this way? Because I wasn't asking. I was just going about life. But he is a jealous God, and he will try to gain our attention one way or the other. And I wonder how many times like favoring fire, how many times I'm looking to the miraculous for justification or substance, and of course, like, that's not where it's at. Anyone can experience that and still die in the wilderness.
True.
I don't want to do that.